My next guest is Professor Kevin Hindle, co-author of the book Entrepreneurship, Context, Vision and Planning. Professor Hindle has over 25 years experience researching entrepreneurship. He's been a guest lecturer at over 30 universities worldwide, and today we'll be interviewing him about entrepreneurship, humanity and civilization. Kevin Hindle, welcome to Project Civilization.
Oh, thanks a lot, mate. Good to be here, Marcus.
How important is entrepreneurship to civilization?
Well, actually, it's a very good question. I think it's absolutely fundamental. Now, most people might find that answer surprising because they've got some kind of very limited idea of entrepreneurship, about being perhaps the start of new businesses, etc. And of course, it's involved with that, but it's involved with much more. I think entrepreneurship has to be understood as one of the two components of innovation. Innovation has two components. First, you've got to create new knowledge, call that invention if you will, the sheer creation of new knowledge. It's absolutely fundamental to humankind, and we're the only species that can do that. And then with that new knowledge, you've got to get some value out of it. So you have to transform something that might be interesting into something that's useful. And that's the value transformation process, and that's what entrepreneurship is. And maybe we can discuss that in a bit more detail as we go along. But here's the thing. Our species is called Homo sapiens, which means pretty much the wise given species of ape, the Homo species of ape. Well, I hate that idea of just calling ourselves the wise species, because let me tell you, there's plenty of wise species, and that includes bees. They're pretty wise if you look at their organisation of a hive, pretty smart stuff. All the higher primates are wise in the sense that they can marshal knowledge. But virtually every species except ourselves and the Neanderthals, who disappeared, 30,000 years ago, we're the only ones, and now we are the only species, that can actually create new knowledge and do something useful with it. And I think that is absolutely fundamental to humanity, and that's where I'd like to see people's understanding of entrepreneurship start. That it's not some little optional extra on the margins of economics or something. It is a fundamental characteristic and necessity for all humankind to exist, and certainly for civilization.
What would be the link between innovation and entrepreneurship?
Innovation is two processes. It involves two processes. One is invention, the creation of new knowledge. And the second is the transformation of that new knowledge into specific value for specific people and purposes. And that second activity, you know, it's been called many things: commercialization, implementation, blah, blah, blah. But actually, it is entrepreneurship. This is a generic model of the model of entrepreneurial process, and it's how every entrepreneurial process works. So we're going to question whether there's an opportunity, and at the bottom of the whole process, we're going to either achieve or not achieve some value. That's what our quest is for. So we find that we need three distinct capacities, and there's three distinct areas that entrepreneurship, in every time it's done, every process has three principal components. And the entrepreneurial capacity, and that's the equivalent there would be saying, well, a medical capacity for a doctor is actually knowing how to diagnose people and detect disease and perhaps recommend how to fix them up. But then that doctor's got to have a psychological capacity, and then he's also, or she has got to have a managerial capacity. So you've got to want to be a doctor, and then you've got to get some resources and people and a team around you, and if you're say a general practitioner, you'd need to have a secretarial. So it's not sufficient just to have the core skill in any human endeavour. But what is the sheer capacity in entrepreneurship? Well, this is the strategic domain of the process. The psychological capacity is the personal domain. The managerial capacity is the tactical domain. So let's just use as an example for this discussion the idea that there's been a new invention, and we're thinking perhaps we could actually build a business around it and create some value for people, and therefore some value for ourselves as entrepreneurs or an entrepreneurial team. And you want to do that systematically, and you want to come up at the end with some value if you possibly can. That's what it's about. That's the beginning, and value is the end.
Recently, the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, proclaimed that the mining boom in Australia has, quote, receded, and he's acknowledged that Australia ranks either last or second last within the OECD nations as having the lowest amount of money towards business research and collaboration. So his government's solution is to implement coding courses within schools, $13 million for various programs and awareness campaigns, as well as relaxing the insolvency laws with bankruptcy periods down from 3 years to 1 year. Is the government on the right track, or is it simply more talk in your view?
Well, it's always good to see anything that purports to help innovation in Australia. So you must start from that proposition. But unfortunately, I think that the measures that you've stressed there, and there are a few more in the Turnbull package to be fair to the government than just those, but they are really, my big critique would be that they're an eclectic selection of possibly or even definitely good things to do, but they lack that understanding of what I was talking about, the big picture of how fundamentally important entrepreneurship is and what it is. And it is the skill that we lack here is not the ability to create new knowledge. We're very good at that, particularly in things like medical research. In biomedicine, we still have one of the world's leading industries, which is unusual for Australia. We're tending to fall behind in more areas than we're getting in front, but we don't want to beat up too heavily on ourselves. However, what is really, really missing, and has been now for 30 years, over 30 years that I've been in the entrepreneurship game, is that not only governments, but it tends to be business leaders, everybody fundamentally misunderstands that entrepreneurship is the skill of transforming new knowledge into new value for people. And I would like to see Australians at all levels, from kindergarten through to postgraduate years, get trained in that skill. And the really best thing that could be done would be to get a really theoretically based, practically oriented education program at all levels of Australian society to teach people how to do this stuff, to do the transformation of new knowledge into new value. And a lot of the measures that have been mentioned are kind of peripheral to that. They're actually more about creating new knowledge than they are about converting it, transforming it into new value. And so it's really an example of the fact that entrepreneurship is not properly understood in this country, never has been, and it should be. Because for nearly 30 years now, entrepreneurship has been a discipline in the Academy of Management. That's American, but it's actually a world body, the peak body for teaching management to people. And people in Australia tend to be, and the world more generally, tend to be aware that, there's a discipline called marketing, and we accept that there's a thing called organisational behaviour, there's accountancy and finance and corporate strategy. All these are known, but miraculously, entrepreneurship is not appreciated as being a discipline that not only is the equal of those, but it's actually got a bigger body of scholars involved in that discipline in the rest of the world than all but accounting does. So all our policies tend to be based on what people would like and a bit of kind of anecdotal stuff here, and the research base gets left out. Now, there's a phenomenal base of research in entrepreneurship, and there is an ability to teach it well to people. And I would like to see some government programs that did that, and a lot of the mentoring programs that are in government, etc. We've got, I think now, my last count, there are well over, I think, 1,400 people in Australia, in Commonwealth and state governments, who are involved in what I would call mentoring business to be more innovative. And there is not one single consistent theme that exists between them to do that systematically, to report it, to put it on the basis of entrepreneurship, scholarship, etc. So these are the kind of programs I'd like to have. I'd like to have entrepreneurship properly understood and well respected as a discipline in its own right, and to have a systematic attempt to teach Australians at all levels how to do the evaluation process, how to evaluate whether an idea which might be good academically or even technically could be turned into a new high value adding capability for Australia. And his favourite word's agile, and I like that word, it's a good word. Malcolm Turnbull's very clever to come up with that. But you can't be agile if you don't know what to do, you know. You really, you just look twitchy. The difference between an acrobat who can do a really good forward twist and tumble and get a good round of applause from someone who just throws himself recklessly about the floor. And we're still throwing ourselves recklessly about. We're not systematic because we don't understand what entrepreneurship is, and we should.
An area of interest to me is the history of empires, because it may have an impact on the fertility of entrepreneurship. In 1978, the British soldier, Lieutenant General Sir John Glubb, wrote a paper titled The Fate of Empires and the Search for Survival. In that paper, he said that all living civilizations are living empires, and they have a start and an end date, and typically last for around 250 years. He said that there are 6 stages of an empire, beginning with pioneering and ending in the age of decadence. He found that all failed empires had in common the debasement of their currency. Do you believe that the West is trending towards this type of fate, or do you think that something can be done?
Well, Sir John, bless him, he's in a good company or bad company, depending on the way you think. Probably the most famous person who theorises like that is the historian Oswald Spengler. And I actually don't like that way of thinking, because it's what's called a teleological view that tends to think that all history is trending towards a given end. That's a very totalitarian perspective on humanity. It didn't work for Hegel, didn't work for Marx, and it's not going to work for Sir John. See, I think that a lot of the telltale signs of a civilization that is suffering and not doing as well as it could are definitely with us, but to be so pessimistic that you think that portends an end and that every other society has ended the same way, I don't agree with that at all. It's probably one of the few areas I don't agree with Voltaire. He had a view that was the case as well. And I think, because I've got such a faith in entrepreneurship and the ability of this species to create new value, that we have the capacity nearly at any time to turn things around and do a better job. Now, that can be a failure of policy, it can be a failure of education, it can be a failure of willpower not to do so. But I think the good news in all of this is that to get into a really bad situation takes a long time. I'll give you the example of Nazi Germany. It's actually the culmination of a whole set of negative trends in German history. It didn't happen in 5 minutes. And then there was a touchstone, sure, the stupidity of the Treaty of Versailles and the bad treatment of the German people, etc. But anti-Semitism wasn't invented by Hitler. Dissatisfaction with the failure of the middle class wasn't invented by Hitler. But he came along and he really needed dealing with. And really, that war was a horrible war. 6 years was a lifetime of grief for many people. But actually, it was 300 years in the making, if you like, from at least before the Treaty of Westphalia, and it was 6 years to fix. Now, if we turned all the human energies, the capacity we've got and things, or even a bit of them, onto making value out of good, clean air rather than filthy air, out of seeking value in things that helped people rather than harmed people. We can do this. We've got a track record of it. So I don't accept that every empire fails the same way, that they even fail. I think there's a lot of Rome, a lot of Byzantium, a lot of the best of the Islamic learned tradition that's still with us, hasn't gone away. So I'm not in the same pessimistic camp as Sir John, although I'm not very happy with the way we're doing it right at the moment.
Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you need any more information about Kevin Hindle or his work, you can visit his website, kevinhindle.com. I'll also put a link to his website on the description of this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you liked it, or donate. We all need the money. And stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching.
That's light, isn't it? Okay, there we go. I reckon I'll pick from us on it.
Throwing down the avenue, so happy that horizon, that English chappie, that very snappy, and that's mixed where Rockefellers walk with sticks, from the rebels and enemies, putting on the Reds.
Thank you, Kevin.